Hello, dear friends. We're sincerely glad to greet you again. Today we're going to talk with the esteemed Igor Mikhailovich Danilov.
Greetings.
Igor Mikhailovich, thank you so much for the previous video, for the truly frank and honest conversation, because this truth really puts a lot of things in their proper place. We are very grateful that now we can see better those reasons for indifference in the world and why we people sometimes pass by other people's misfortune and other people's suffering. Because the reason for this is our learned helplessness. We think that we supposedly cannot influence anything and supposedly we cannot change anything. And in fact, every time with this detachment, we demonstrate our own powerlessness and we reinforce this result again and again. And of course, your words that we people together can really influence and change a lot of things and build a beautiful world are a great support for us. Firstly, we can save this planet, and secondly, build a world where the dominant value will be human life and the lives of our children. I would also like to thank you on behalf of our viewers for these timely words of support, because just the day before, our viewers shared that they had such ambivalent thoughts. On the one hand, they feel enormous responsibility, enormous eagerness to do something and to act in order to bring about change, while on the other hand, they were hearing persistent thoughts that everything is lost, looking at what is happening in the world and how is it actually possible to reach everyone. The task is already so incredibly difficult and perhaps insurmountable. And then consciousness says, maybe this task has no solution at all. Therefore, there's certainly a request to comment on this situation. Does this task have a solution?
Let's just say humanity has never faced a task that didn't have a solution. It's true. We cannot always see this solution right away. But believe me, there is no point in setting a task that humanity would not be able to solve. Sometimes we certainly have to make immense efforts. Naturally, there will be disappointments along the way, but there will also be upswings. Sometimes we rejoice at little successes more than at big victories, because from little successes, big victories emerge. Understanding and knowing this, we will nevertheless be able to come to what we strive for, but only if we don't give up, if we find the strength in ourselves and share this strength, knowledge and understanding with other people. Everything is actually simple. It is our consciousness that always complicates it, foists numerous doubts, and points out to us what is happening now. And there is an understanding that less and less time remains with every day lived aimlessly, with every day where we failed to fully implement all our opportunities. We feel and understand that we have missed something. Hence, there arises our pessimism regarding the picture of the world as a whole. But on the other hand, it is possible to understand such people too in whom this doubt arises. When they look at their own children, when they look at what is happening outside their window and what is happening across the world, how much climatic changes are gaining momentum and what's going on in the world on the whole, taking into account wars and all the geopolitical perturbations happening nowadays, ambiguity and uncertainty about tomorrow, and of course, the climate is drastically aggravating day by day. Indeed, we see what is now happening all over the globe: floods, earthquakes, and many other large-scale events that are only getting worse. So naturally, such apathy may overwhelm us when we just want to give up. But is it worth giving up? A simple question. If we give up, then what's the point? We have an opportunity to really solve the tasks set before us. The only question is how effective and what kind of a solution it will be in general. I would put it this way. Let me explain. Just look, friends, as of today, our task is simple. If we don't take any countermeasure against what causes the changes that we see on our planet, Meanwhile, the cause lies in the external influence coming from outer space onto our planet, onto what is inside our planet. Naturally, there is a tremendous release of energy. As we know, the ocean is losing its functions, those which it used to perform for millions and millions of years, and this certainly causes those events in which we are already living. It is clear that people don't want to hear. This is a natural human reaction. We shouldn't take offense at them either, and we shouldn't despair. But, on the other hand, we should convince them somehow. We should not even convince, but explain. After all, we are telling the truth. We are calling things by their proper names. Every normal, sensible person actually sees what's going on. Clearly, there are also those who say that the climate is not changing, but this is fear. This is their inner fear, and one of the forms of self-protection is denial of what is obvious. However, smart people see and understand, and they are aware of where it's all heading. A proper explanation to them of cause and effect relationships can actually help us with our solution. The question is, do people really want to change the format of society? In this case, the question is really different. Why? Because it means another fear. Not only are global climatic changes taking place, and we tell people that the world is changing anyway, it's not the same as it used to be. The world is certainly not the same as it was 10 years ago. Today, major world politicians are already saying that the world is really changing and we will have to live in new conditions. I like their optimism. The statement that the world is changing is wonderful, but the fact that we'll have to live in new conditions fills us with a kind of optimism. You have to agree that life will be preserved, and many people understand that it should be this way. It's illogical for humanity to end its existence. People want it to be preserved. But the truth, is very cruel, because we are very cruel. We as people are really irresponsible, cruel, and greedy. That's why the world is such. But everything can be changed if we have such a desire. And I'll give you a simple example. Yes, it is difficult to solve especially such serious tasks when the whole world and other people are involved. A simple example. Let's imagine, friends. Yes, let's fantasize and use our own imagination a little bit. And let's say that we, without relying on anyone, are very well aware that politicians don't have time for the climate. They have serious problems. All over the world, in nearly all countries, scientists don't have time either, because they are busy doing whatever they can to survive. But the climate is changing. It is a real threat to our children and to ourselves as well. So, in the current situation, our friends, our scientists, are finding at least some solution, or a realistic solution that can indeed change the situation for the better, stop it, or even protect our planet from climate change. And this raises another question, a moral and ethical one. Do we actually have a right to use the technology that we have created, for example, to stop destructive climate change? A simple question. Yes, we can save the planet, but do we have the moral right to do it without coordinating it with all the people, with the whole world, with those very leaders of different countries? After all, it concerns them as well. If there is no approval from them on that, and if there is no people's support, a good question, isn't it? And it seems that the lives of our children, their countries, and the whole world depend on this. Yet it turns out that we do not have such a chance. That's a paradox. If we use these technologies to save our own lives, then we will use them against the will, wishes and aspirations of the rest of the people, while they are the majority. So what should we do in this situation? And that's another task.
To use the technologies of such a level.
Of course, because again, technologies of such a level, as you say, are aimed at protecting our planet. But this is something new and absolutely unexplored. And theoretically, yes, it can serve, let's say, as a shield against this external cosmic influence. But what will be the consequences? And here, people will have a question. You, when trying to protect our planet, you used technologies that could cause people and countries to suffer. After all, is such a thing possible? It is. Why? We don't know the effect it will actually have. In theory, yes, everything should be fine. But let's imagine that we have about 10 years, from 5 to 7 years of relatively quiet life. But if this technology is not used in time, it will be pointless, whereas if it is used in time, are we sure that it will not accelerate the processes that are quite destructive even for a part of the population of our globe? Look, on the one hand, in order to save the larger part of humanity, we can sacrifice the smaller part. But who said that we should sacrifice, for example, the life of your child? After all, this is wrong. Or to sacrifice your life. This is wrong. After all, none of us want to be sacrificed. This is really so, in order for the rest of the community to live. So how should we deal with this situation without getting approval from people? A simple question. Meanwhile, there is another way: to bring these technologies to public discussion, to involve scientists and to involve powers that be. But these technologies are associated with new discoveries in physics, and based on these technologies, nuclear weapons already become something like, a plastic shovel in a children's sandbox. This is true. This is indeed true. And then what? Then, in an attempt to get rid of one problem, we as humanity doom ourselves to what? To an existence as biorobots, with a single desire to serve our ruler. After all, it's really easy. Well, some people might say, why not use these technologies, for example, in building the creative society, right? There are a lot of people who don't know, don't want to, and have doubts. After all, it is possible to influence people and not to enslave them, but simply to make them agree to build the creative society. And for such people, in fact, many people wrote about this. I have a question for them. Isn't that violence? Of course it is violence. Yet, is it possible to build the creative society by starting with violence, with some revolutions, even if they are scientific and technical? But in fact, it is violence against people. What does it mean to force people to make one or another decision? What right do we have to decide something for people? Where is the freedom of choice given to them by God? This is against the essence and therefore unacceptable. And look how interesting it is. We have a problem with many variables, yet we need to find a solution. I understand that the current picture of the world may, in general, give rise to hope in some of our friends and disappointment in others. But on the other hand, this is life. Life is always full of surprises, it is always full of some countercurrents and things we don't want. But that's why we are endowed with the mind. If we use it correctly, instead of us serving it, make it serve us and the entire humanity. Then I'm sure that we will be able to come to a specific decision necessary for us. However, what it will be like is up to people to decide. Based on all of this, I'll tell our friends the following. The time will come when we will stand at the crossroads. It is not far off. And based on this decision, all of us will act. However, we have two ways. Either to go with the flow, or simply to use other technologies. I'm not talking about mundane life. I am now talking about something higher. You know, no matter what the situation is in this world, and no matter what is happening here, it all concerns only our temporary existence on this planet. It is temporary anyway, just like our planet is temporary. It doesn't matter even if we succeed in resisting the external cosmic radiation in this cycle. If we manage to save this world, to save our own lives and the lives of our children, our planet will still come to an end someday, let it be in millions of years, or maybe even earlier. Everything depends on how the human community will treat this planet. But as of today, as we can see, we've been treating our planet in such a way that we deserve what is happening. Let's not delve into this subject, it is sad, but it's true, and each of us understands this. Let's better return to the issue of unsolved tasks. Tell me, are we humans really that stupid and heartless? Are we so mired in our own selfishness that we do not see simple, elementary, well-known and generally understandable things, such as elementary responsibility for our children? There is no such a thing as someone else's children in this world. Children are not to blame for anything, and even adults, to be honest, can hardly be blamed for much because our thoughts are imposed on us, evoking in us certain desires, hatred, anger, a desire to dominate someone, or to seize someone's possessions, or even up to a thought that someone deserves death. And we forget about simple words that should be the main ones for us, that there is nothing more important and valuable than human life. If we remembered this from the very beginning, we wouldn't have had this problem. We as the entire humanity would be engaged in improving everyone's life. We would be building a wonderful world instead of what we've been doing. However, for 6,000 years, we've been actually heading towards the outcome that we are now facing. Yes, we as a generation are the lucky ones, so to say, to meet the climate Cerberus eye to eye. But if God is with us, we can defeat even the Cerberus, while God is love. It is respect for one another. First and foremost, it's a union based on seemingly simple and natural human foundations. It is what should prevail in this world. However, in this world there prevails power, a desire for enrichment and hoarding. And nowadays, looking at what is happening in the world, many smart people understand perfectly well that we've been going the wrong way. But since they understand that we've been going the wrong way, then maybe they will understand where we, as humanity, should go. Maybe, for we do have a chance. So friends, these are our tasks. It seems they have so many unknowns, and everything is kind of complicated. But on the other hand, if we look at it, anything is possible for a human being. We, as a society, as a unit, if we can find the strength within ourselves and really become a civilization, then we will manage to build both the creative society and the ideal society, and to reveal tremendous opportunities for each of us. If we find the strength within ourselves, and do you know where this strength is? Within ourselves. When we listen to doubts, when we are in a state of despondency, we spend our strength, which we could spend on victory, on resolving this difficult task with many unknowns, but we spend it on saying that there are a lot of unknowns here, and we don't know how to solve this task. Of course we don't know. That's why it's a task. That's why we need a solution, but we can solve it together. Instead of doubting and being idle, it is much better to look for solutions, to look for people in whom life glimmers and who have a sense of responsibility, not those who just try to shift the responsibility onto someone else, but those who can take on responsibility for their own children. And the question is very simple. Will we be able, as humanity, to take responsibility, or will we continue to look for someone else to shift this responsibility onto? If we continue to do everything as we've been doing to this day, if we shift the responsibility for our future and for our children onto those whom we endowed with power over ourselves, then we understand very well that nothing will change. Then we shouldn't strain ourselves and try to solve this task. Then it is better to engage in personal spiritual development according to your religion, your desires and aspirations. This is at least some chance. A chance to gain life eternal. This is also good, especially when the world is in such a state of hopelessness. But whether there will be hopelessness or a solution depends on our choice. So there can simply be no unsolvable tasks, friends. It all depends on us. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, friends. Peace be with you, and God's love.